Hello, everyone. I'm Joe,
And I'm Alex.
and welcome to Hungover Politics, the show where we get drunk and talk about the issues of the day.
Except how often do I ever actually get drunk? Almost never.
And
But
realistically, I've only been drunk for half the episodes, too.
that's correct. But since I'm suffering from a chronic, never ending hypoxia, I might as well be drunk.
That's true.
So today we're going to talk about a subject near and dear to my heart, or the half of it that exists. And it's just something that really makes me feel feelings within. And that would be the quick and almost purposeful destruction of Apple.
I mean, that is pretty much imminent at this point.
Yes, and it's beautiful. Why? I don't know. I just want to see a big company been being torn down by the market, crumbled, scattered. If I may quote JFK, I want it to be broken and scattered, broken into a million pieces and scattered in the wind.
All this because Apple. What did Apple do to you, Alex? Where did they touch you?
Apple touched me in all the wrong places, as opposed to before when they touched me in all the right places. But this time, Apple has seemingly poked the bear one too many times with one too many people, involving their closed garden ecosystem. Uh, it's truly beautiful how how seemingly anti-consumer Apple is. However, blank.
I see
I'm
that.
dying.
So how has Apple's closed wall ecosystem hurt you?
Well, you see, they charge a fee, um, and have certain requirements for developers to put their application on the App Store. And from the side of the developers, 30% is just way too damn high. And
I mean,
uh, I,
30% was the industry standard for online marketplaces like this until fairly recently.
it was, but all of a sudden, everyone hates the idea of 30%. And from my perspective, that looks kind of weird. But at the same time, if it tears Apple down, I'm going to look the other way and say everything's fine.
Right.
This is normal. Now, Apple has always had a closed ecosystem, especially like since the inception of the company, um, specifically with the Apple II and their and moving on to the Mac, where they used very specific tooling, oddly shaped tips per se for how to access the system from within, weird screws that required weird tools to be machined. Um, but but it's just gone too far. It's just gone too far because you see, Apple just got too gay for their own good, both figuratively and literally. Um,
And now you
Apple,
can't use your V-Bucks.
you can't use your V Bucks. You're not allowed to use your V Bucks unless your V Bucks are going through the Apple system, and then all of a sudden you just can't use them anymore. The
Well, I mean,
decades,
anyone who has V-Bucks at the moment and only plays Fortnite on iPhone has already really lost the ability to use their V-Bucks. Well, I don't know. When an app gets banned from the App Store, does Apple remove it from users' phones? Or do they only stop people from downloading it again?
they only stop people from downloading it again.
Okay. Because I know Apple has some spooky powers that modders found that are just like, hey, we can completely disable an application on your phone from our end.
Correct, and I'm not sure if that's what happened. knowing the Flappy Bird saga, uh, people were still able to play the game even though it was removed from the App Store. Specifically withdrawn this time by the developer, but same thing. It's removed from the App Store, inaccessible to be downloaded, new on the device. But people who already had downloaded the application were able to play it. Unfortunately, I wasn't one of those people, so I had to buy Floppy Bird, Flippy Bird, Flippy Peaks. Just a wide variety of knockoffs of Flappy Bird in
So,
order
so
to
you were still an
really
iPhone
immerse
user at
myself
that point in time.
in order to really immerse myself in the Flappy experience. I was an iPhone user at that time. It was an unfortunate saga of my life.
That's
But
unfortunate because I just sideloaded it on Android, and it worked fine.
yeah,
Because that's really the one thing that Google has here that Apple doesn't. Is Google at the very least can say, look, in our app store you have to pay the 30% fee and you have to follow our rules, but you technically can sideload applications, and we strongly recommend against it. And security policies by default say no, but you can easily enough turn off those security policies and download applications through third-party marketplaces.
so let me give you some more context on what's really happening to Apple right now. Um, because of political pressures on both sides of the aisle, there are, and for various reasons, there's a lot of incentive for politicians to really crack down on in whatever way they can manage uh, on these like very large tech conglomerates. So there have been a couple of congressional hearings where various CEOs come to testify and lie through their teeth about the operations of their companies.
Well, of course.
Yeah, I mean, naturally, and so that's been interesting to watch. The first one was pretty boring, but the second one was particularly funny. Um, but the antitrust sentiments among the population are increasing, and political support for antitrust movements on these companies is also increasing. So Apple is already kind of in the spur of all of this of just a generalized antitrust pursuit via these tech companies. They have specifically gotten themselves embroiled with consumer interests in antitrust. So not only are the politicians just bringing them in, asking them a variety of retardedly worded questions on censorship and spooky stuff that goes on, privacy breaches, relations to China and the Communist Party. Uh, Not only is that happening on one side, but on the entire other side, on the consumer, the individual citizen perspective, there are developers that are going after Apple for their closed ecosystem because I'm guessing just this is the correct timing, and they were waiting for this moment when it got kind of popular to talk about these closed systems in a more negative light, uh, to be able to initiate these suits. One of these suits happened fairly recently from Epic Games, merely 2 days ago, I believe. Um, Epic Games filed a lawsuit against both Apple and Google. So
Wait,
it's
they filed it against Google? I didn't know that.
they filed it against Google yesterday. Yep,
Did Google actually
and
take them down from the App Store?
yes.
Wow.
However, again, you can sideload the game,
Right.
which is an important distinction. So it's not that big of a deal on Google, but they just decided to breach contracts with Apple and Google as far as what you can do and what you can say about your app, and they were letting customers know that you can get V-Bucks and whatnot through
30%
their
off.
30% off through their website rather than going through the traditional system by just going through your phone, going through the Play Store or the App Store. in order to get the V-Bucks, right? So they breached contract, waited for Apple and Google to respond, and then sued them accordingly.
Right.
Now, apparently, this has all been happening since mid June. Mid June is when the Epic Games CEO Tim Sweeney told the Washington Post that the iOS quote the iOS App Store's monopoly protects only Apple profit, not device security. So throwing some shade at the curious fruity company, um, and he also continued to make statements. He quote tweets. He quote tweets Apple's reasoning for their kind of spooky way they let apps into the App Store. Because not only do they charge this 30%, but sometimes apps are taken off for ideological reasons. Sometimes like for instance, there was an app that helped protesters in Hong Kong identify where police barricades were, and it helped route them around them. Now, normally I would be like, an interesting app, especially based off of the recent events here in the states. But anything to go against China, I'm all in support. So in Hong Kong, they're trying to get around, and they have this app on the App Store, and Apple just spookily takes it down and cites security for the protesters, and it's really not a big deal. But uh, apparently, the people who were using the app did not feel the same. But going back to the story of Epic Games,
Yeah, well, I
the
mean, they're very secure now that they are in Chinese prison camps.
correct, very secure and safe, peak security.
Yeah.
So Sweeney quote tweets Apple because Apple justified their actions against developers by saying, um, "Here, Apple speaks of a level playing field. To me, this means all iOS developers are free to process payments directly. All users are free to install software from any source. And in this endeavor, Epic won't seek or accept a special deal just for ourselves."
Right, because that's part of their complaint is, I believe it's Amazon has like their own exception where they can just sell. I think they're even allowed to have an app store on iOS. I know they do on Android. They have their own app store, but I know on iOS they have some payment processing deal with them where they don't have to give Apple the Apple tax, or at least not 30%. I think they pay 10% or something, or maybe even nothing at all. And other apps like that also seem to get away with it, like Netflix, Hulu, all them. They don't seem to be required to use Apple's payment method to allow it or
And this
to subscribe.
and this model speaks to the crux of the issue, which is not really about percentages or profit or whatever. It's really about a certain sense of equality under the law, per se. That rules for thee, but not for me. This is the same kind of idea that permeates a lot of people who are censored on various platforms, such as Google and their the smaller part, YouTube, Facebook, various websites that censor people for a variety of reasons, more specifically political speech or controversial speech in general.
Mm-hmm.
Twitter for their verification process to get the check mark, and that really it's more like a elite's blue club rather than just the kind of straight sense that they advertise that, oh no, you're just actually verified, and that's all it is.
Well,
Instead
there
of
was a brief moment where Twitter did that. Is they were like, hey, look, all you got to do is send in a picture of your ID and a couple other documents, and you will be verified. Because people had been complaining for a long time about how unfair Twitter's verification was. And then they were like, oh, too many
actually,
normies are getting verified. We're going to take away that option now.
right.
Because I tried to get verified during that. And I think at the time the requirement was like you have to have 100 followers or something like that. And then you had to provide some basic identifying documents to prove that you were who you said you were. And then that was it.
The 100 followers is kind of strange for an identification verification process.
Well, I mean, as far as I know, this was all done by hand.
Right.
So I imagine that they just wanted, like, okay, we can't have everybody getting verified on here because it'll take too long.
Right.
And I don't remember what the rule was. There might not have been a follower requirement, but I think there was.
Anyway, continuing forward. This is June 16th, what I just said about his first kind of Tim Sweeney, again, CEO of Epic Games, his first kind of throw-in with Apple. On June 23rd, Sweeney tweeted, opening iOS and Android up as truly open platforms with a genuinely level playing field between first-party and third-party apps and stores is the only way to ensure a competitive, healthy, and fair app economy. Again, now he's focusing more on the crux of the issue, that it's not really about profits. Again, it's about, or at least the narrative goes, it's not about profits. It's about a level playing field, that we don't want an elite club, being able to get by with these, get around certain policies at Apple for controversial content or whatever. Again, this goes all the way back to the adpocalypse in YouTube, when people were talking about the why are there so many corporate channels? Why are there so many, the Late Show and all these late night shows and Fox and CNN and all these people? Why can they talk about terroristic activity and politics and gore and get into that, and a small channel can't, because they'll be booted off? Why are the community guidelines selectively enforced for these people who are already big? It kind of just again protects this elite club of people who can skirt by, right? These people who are not beholden to the community guidelines. On top of the fact that the community guidelines in general seem to be selectively enforced for the most part. So it really just goes back to that. It seems like for at least the next 5 or so years, and the previous 5 or so years, that's really been the argument. That was even part of the argument of, I believe, net neutrality. People were talking about some websites were given would be given special treatment over other websites, and that was bad.
Right, but then when one platform provides that same special treatment on its own platform, then it's fine.
Right. So it's it kept going throughout this back and forth, or this, I guess, back per se, because it's only Sweeney tweeting things. It all came to a head, all throughout June, and then July he tweets a couple of things as well, but really about the same things. Now, in on July 28th, he mentions the 30% store fees, and he says that this is not anti-competitive, which I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, but whatever. It's really the fact that there are no alternatives on the device for any way to load, and there's nothing actually wrong with this. But it seems like the internet, or at least the internet community as a whole, has kind of agreed on a certain culture of openness. And this violates this cultural openness norm on the internet. I mean, people have disliked the Apple closed system for a very long time, but it seems to be building. Their complaints are building over this. That you can't, on Android you can sideload apps, but on the App Store you can. And the more ubiquitous these kind of these like a natural duopoly kind of occurs within the App Store space between the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store, the more people believe that they should be beholden to the same kind of openness that the internet at large focuses on as a like a cultural distinction within this space. So he
Well,
talked.
and not to mention, there's direct anti-competitive behavior here. So, like, part of the complaint is, theoretically, if you could just have an iPhone and then have another device that could get around Apple's App Store uh, in a reasonable manner, then it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But the thing is, these devices cost more than computers these days. I mean, a new iPhone costs pretty much exactly what my fairly nice laptop costs. Um, so, like, no one would expect me to have this laptop and then go buy a Mac for the right to use some random piece of software once. And not only has Apple been doing that, but they've been directly targeting their competitors. So they said xCloud will never come to the App Store, which xCloud is a direct competitor for Apple Arcade. Um, they've been having issues with Spotify, which is a direct competitor to Apple Music. Let's see, who else is there? The email app Hey is upset. So basically, because once you buy an iPhone, you are basically locked into iPhone until you decide to. And this can be a tough decision because if you've had an iPhone for 20 years, you've probably spent hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on apps, on top of the price of the phone itself. And when you switch over to Google, you lose that. There's no real way to carry those over. So basically, you're locked into this platform and you have no way to get around Apple's restrictions on it. I mean, you could jailbreak it, but jailbreaking is obviously not Apple supported, and in fact, more often than not, impossible for a long time.
Well, it also voids the warranty on the device itself, on the hardware, despite it being a software thing.
I mean, to be fair, you can just remove the jailbreak if you got to bring it into the Apple Store. They still don't have a way to detect it.
That's true.
Samsung does. Knox is pretty good at detecting a root, but even on Android, the need to root is pretty limited. I mean, I used to root my Android phones almost 10 years ago. And like back then it did something. It was, hey, this is real power user shit that you can get into here. Nowadays, unless you need some very specific power user shit, there's no real reason to root. Whereas, really, jailbreaking an iPhone brings it up to just par with Android in terms of what you can do with your device. And that's a real problem for Apple. Because you can sideload apps with a jailbreak, but again, jailbreaks take a long time to come out. The second that iOS updates, which, as far as I know, it kind of likes to do that automatically now, your jailbreak just goes away. It's not really an argument against anti-competitive behavior because Apple would and does anything they can to shut down jailbreaks. Whereas roots, again, for the most part, Android manufacturers are content to say, look, you root the phone, your warranty is void. But otherwise, why do we give a fuck? Like, they do patch them, but they're kind of unofficially supported, in a way. A lot better than jailbreaks are on iPhone, or iOS at least.
Correct. So this all came to a head on the 13th of August. Nearly, I believe 2 days ago. When, again, Apple already being embroiled in the discussion of antitrust and anti-competitive behavior and the App Store and privacy concerns and, randomly spooking apps off the store, whatnot. While doing this, Apple seemingly in an act of either unbelievable pride, hubris, or stupidity, or some kind of conniving plan to get the company split up. On August 13th, Epic Games introduces the direct payment option in the Fortnite app for the iPhone and iPad, allowing players to purchase in-game V-Bucks at a 20%, actually it wasn't 30%, 20% discount by sidestepping Apple's in-app purchase mechanism. This functionality violated the Apple's App Store review guidelines, which indicate that apps offering in-game currency must use Apple's in-app purchase mechanism only. The response to this, and they also did this on the Google Play Store as well, but Google took a little bit longer to remove the app, a day. But Apple was very quick to remove the app from the App Store. So Apple removed Fortnite from the App Store in a move that I believe will make many 10-year-olds quite upset when they get their first iPhone, thinking they can download their cartoonish Fortnite game. But alas, it's no longer there, and there's no way to sideload it. So, in a statement Apple made, they say, today, Epic Games took the unfortunate step of violating the App Store guidelines that were applied equally to every developer and designed to keep the store safe for our users. As a result, their Fortnite app. Now remember this kind of safety and security reasoning Apple has was something that was already criticized nearly 2 months prior by Tim Sweeney, the Epic Games CEO, right? But he says the store is safe for our users. As a result, their Fortnite app has been removed from the store. Eric enabled a feature in its app which was not reviewed or approved by Apple, and they did so with the express intent of violating the App Store's guidelines regarding in-app payments. That again, and then they're very sure to say that apply to every developer who sells digital goods or services. Epic has had these apps on the App Store for a decade and have benefited from the App Store ecosystem, including its tools, testing, and distribution that Apple provides to all developers. Epic agreed to the App Store terms and guidelines freely, and we're glad they built such a successful business on the App Store. The fact that their business interests now lead them to push for a special arrangement, ironic, does not change the fact that these guidelines create a level playing field for all developers. This is the third time they've said this in a 2-paragraph statement, by the way.
Well, yeah, again, they are facing antitrust laws
correct.
here. So they have to say all the time that, no, we're definitely not a trust. This isn't a monopoly. We don't have complete control over the marketplace. Now, ignore the fact that we have complete control over the marketplace. That's completely irrelevant here, because we're being very fair with how we have complete dominance over the marketplace. And let's remember that Microsoft got split up over bundling Internet Explorer with Windows. That was an antitrust case 30 years ago. But now, complete market dominance over, 40% of smartphones?
Correct.
So 100% control over 40% of smartphones. That is a lot of users who cannot get outside the Apple ecosystem because Apple has no means of allowing that. And that's not an antitrust case?
Guess not.
I mean, really, the only unfortunate thing here is that Android is so good that Apple is losing market share. So it's kind of hard to argue they're a trust when no one buys their products anymore. But that is the only downside. And I mean, still, Apple is the single biggest smartphone manufacturer. They have a strong plurality of smartphone sales. But Android is the majority of shipped operating systems.
Right. So, basically, they make this statement. And Epic Games files a lawsuit describing the company as a monopoly power and accusing it of unfair and anti-competitive actions. It also alleged that Apple has become once rallied against the behemoth seeking to control markets, block competition, and stifle innovation. And with this statement, they released a mock video of Apple's um, famous 1984 commercial. This one involving Fortnite caricatures fighting against Apple itself. So that was beautiful and definitely not planned. That was very spontaneous. It's totally not like Epic has been planning to do this for, arguably 2 months now, laying the groundwork, sowing the seeds of discord.
Oh
Um,
yeah, that animated video, there was no preparation. I'm sure that could have been done in, what
a
was it,
minute.
about 2 hours?
Yeah,
Yeah.
2 hours.
To be fair, they have the resources. They might just have been able to do that in 2 hours. But still, I'm pretty sure that was pre-rendered and ready to go months ago, and they
So
were just waiting for the day.
So yesterday, to encapsulate the whole freedom and openness of what apps should be, and kind of the open internet vibe that again internet culture seems to have fixated on as a pillar of itself. Um, Yesterday, Sweeney tweeted, "At the most basic level, we're fighting for the freedom of people who bought smartphones to install apps from sources of their choosing, and the freedom for creators of apps to distribute them as they choose, and the freedom of both groups to do business directly." And that's the latest we've gotten on the suit, as far as the talk of it is concerned. I mean, this did come from, yesterday.
2 days ago.
No, no, this tweet was yesterday,
Oh, okay.
unless it's the 16th. Nope, it's the 15th.
No, I thought you were
So,
talking about the lawsuit itself. Came yesterday. That
oh,
came two
correct.
days
No,
ago.
I'm just saying a word on it because Sweeney tweeted, yesterday about this, about kind of encapsulating the narrative behind this lawsuit.
Right. Well, and look, the main argument here is the norm in the tech space is that you've always been able to, whether it was a Mac, a PC, or a Linux based machine, you've always been able to install third party software. Now, Apple has always tried to mitigate that a little bit, but it's kind of been accepted in the desktop operating system market that third party software, you can't really prevent people from using it. Users will just get pissed.
Well, their software is how they sell their hardware. This existed within the company's culture before Steve Jobs even returned to Apple through Next.
Well,
Their
yeah, yeah.
push was to develop an operating system that people wanted more than the fact that the product itself cost tens of thousands of dollars, not adjusted for inflation, back in like the 80s.
Right, right. But,
So
like, even then, which, okay, to be fair, back in the 80s, this probably wouldn't have been possible. But come the age of the internet, it became kind of standard practice that if you wanted to download a program and it was compatible with your operating system, all you had to do was download, the installer for it, and you could run it on whatever OS you were running. Uh, Ignoring Linux, which has a much more complicated process for installing apps that aren't in their app store. But, like, third-party installations of apps have always been a thing. And then the mobile smartphone market came out, and users kind of got used to the idea of these more lockdown operating systems where, like, you can't necessarily Google, hey, whatever app for Android and just immediately install it. I mean, you're going to have to go through some shady website that isn't necessarily legit, isn't really secure, and download it that way, and the app won't be able to update itself and stuff like that. So it's always been kind of accepted on mobile that uh, support for third-party applications would be very limited. Uh, but people are starting to say, hey, what if we didn't do that? What if we actually had those same rights that we do on a typical desktop PC where we can just install third-party software? Which, mind you, Apple switching over to ARM is a little scary on that front. Because with their switch to ARM, I'm not completely sure that they won't just disable that because most desktop programs aren't built with ARM in mind. They're built with x86 in mind.
Look, Joe, at the end of the day, this and what may come of this is a massive threat to Apple's proposed idyllic revenue stream by their model of selling their hardware with their software.
Right.
This is a big issue for them, and their cavalier way of handling the accusations raised against them is, I don't see it as anything other than moronic or even prideful at its core, because we all know the connections between Apple and pride, but in more ways than one.
Ooh.
But I can't really see a reason why Apple would do this unless they wanted intentionally to destroy their own business model. It doesn't make any sense that they'd be poking the bear, especially when it comes to this impending antitrust review
Well, yeah, they're
by the
under
DOJ.
trust investigation in not only the U.S. but also the European Union. So for them to, and again, the EU has been a little bit more willing to push charges against what they perceive to be trusts than the U.S. has, because the U.S. has gone pretty quiet on the whole antitrust thing since Microsoft. I think that kind of damaged their reputation a bit, because Microsoft's reputation was pretty bad in the 90s because of this, but come the early 2000s, people largely saw this antitrust case as unreasonable.
Right.
And so the government has been a lot more willing to just kind of let trusts go by. And for one thing, it's interesting to see the government actually press a trust case against, or an antitrust case against such a large tech company again, because it's been a while. And you
An
notice of
iconic
all the
line that was
companies that are under investigation, who isn't right now?
Microsoft.
Microsoft. Uh, I, like the Microsoft has, I don't know what their game plan is, but they have been very quiet lately. They just keep releasing Windows updates and, refreshing the Xbox every 5 years. But they're pretty quiet. I mean, they've dropped out of the mobile market for the most part. They've dropped out of the browser market almost completely now, with Edge now being Chromium, and they're really like hiding in a couple of corners where they still make money, and just staying there. And I don't know what their game plan is, but it might just be to outlive these other guys.
Which
Because
honestly, it seems like a solid plan because, like I said before, Apple is really like what they're doing now is not a good idea. Unless they know something that I don't, which, when it comes to these political maneuvers, it's really kind of up in the wind. And the way they're messing with public perception of themselves, in the way that they've always interfered with public perception of themselves, in not so much the kindest light, has me concerned for the future of Apple. On behalf of Apple, like I said in the beginning of this cast, I want to see them be crushed into a million pieces because they destroyed 4,000 photos or 3,000 photos over the course of 4 years of my life because I could not take the data off of my phone. So they have wronged me in a very substantial way, more than even Mike. What they did was worse than what Microsoft did that got me to move to Apple in the first place. And this photo incident happened in I think November of 2017, and that's when I kind of switched all my phones to Android. That's when I started getting like Samsung products and whatnot, or at least the Note. But which I still have, by the way. The Note 8 is a great phone even now, believe it or not, for those who want to avoid the disappearing headphone jack trick. But it seems that
yeah,
Apple is really like this is their bread and butter. Their software hardware package, their ecosystem lockdown is how they survive. Their products are ridiculously expensive and very poorly designed to take advantage of of how expensive the chipset that they put in the products are, especially when it comes to the MacBook Air, the MacBook in general, or what used to be the MacBook before they discontinued it again. And Apple is a bit schizo like that. On top of their their MacBook Pro line, their inability to implement any substantial degree of thermal management in their systems. They
I
put
mean, does a
ridiculously
CPU
expensive chips.
need a fan?
I would argue that it does, especially if you put it in an aluminum enclosure.
In an ultralight laptop?
Not
Because this
well,
problem is in the MacBook Air in particular, where they just don't have a fan on the CPU.
well, look, okay. I think everyone kind of knows the properties of aluminum, but if you don't, let me kind of try to paint a picture. When you cook a meal, okay, and you want to keep that food warm just for a little bit, when you really want to insulate it, what kind of what kind of material does one immediately think of? It may be in the form of a foil, perhaps.
Right.
Really to foil the cold and foil the attempts of the heat to escape. It's God, it's on the tip of my tongue. But it just really makes you think of the material that Apple uses, and then what most companies, honestly, use to build their computers. You think Apple would be specifically, well-minded to not to have a pretty robust thermal system, especially when they expect their users to purchase very, very expensive chipsets that are going to be throttled into oblivion because, again, they can't deal with thermals. And there's no real modular way to deal with thermals. They don't even there's not even a substantial way to add components to the computer that would help with the thermal situation. It's very difficult. And this
Well, look,
behavior,
I remember watching a video from Linus on that 2019 or 2020 MacBook Air, whichever
yeah,
one it was. And I just remember he managed to get significantly better thermals by just connecting the CPU directly to the aluminum chassis. Because then, instead of the aluminum chassis becoming an insulator and keeping the heat in the computer, it now became a giant heat sink.
yes.
But also, the base model MacBook Air still ships with a pretty weak i3, and that's I'm pretty sure that's $1,000 or $1,100 computer. In fact, let me look that up real quick. Let's see what a base model MacBook Air costs.
I would know. Oh. But this is a very dangerous game for Apple to be playing. I'm going to be honest, and if Microsoft is just riding this off, riding the wave, waiting for the dust to settle when it comes to these lawsuits and this impending antitrust case, it seems like a pretty good idea to me, because if their bread is separated from their butter, oh man, I can't imagine what it's going to do to their company. Can't even imagine. It would be crushed. Their sales would be crushed if people just got a little bit of taste of their operating system on different hardware, or at least interoperability of applications. Of at the very minimum, if you could run their app store on an Android device, if you could port Android apps into the iPhone, just that alone may make it incredibly difficult for Apple to really have this unification of hardware that sells their software and software that sells their hardware, and the fact that people may get a taste of different apps that they may not be used to in the ecosystem. I don't know. It's just a dangerous game to play.
Oh, look, they now offer to ship it with an i5 as well.
Wow.
So the base model for $999 ships with a Core i3 with turbo boost up to 3.2 gigahertz with a base clock of 1.1. Now, I can't necessarily compare this because the computer that I had that had an i3 in it is almost 10 years old, and back then turbo clocks weren't, or base clocks weren't like in the 1 gigahertz range of turbos. Everything was pretty much all turbo all the time. Um, but 3.2 gigahertz is still on the turbo end weaker than my i3 was. Uh, just all the time. And you're still going to get better performance out of this. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's a 10th generation processor versus I think I had a second. But this is $1,000 computer shipping with $500 computer hardware in it.
That's another issue I have, and it's not specific to Apple, but I just think it's kind of absurd that even Apple does it. And it's that they're selling $1,000 laptop. It's $1,000, and they do the $999 stick.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so they're gonna lose some sales because they're gonna lose that manipulative tactic to get people to buy their products because people see it as only hundreds of dollars instead of thousands of dollars. But
right.
Really, it's just kind of ridiculous.
Well,
if they're selling
the
device
market
for $1,000 to sell it as $999, I'm not even talking about the $1,099. I'm not even talking about $1,499 or whatever. I'm talking about the transition between hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars or $1,000 at minimum. To have a price at $999 is kind of ridiculous.
Well, look, and the thing is, the market is transitioning away from prices like that generally. I mean, walk into a Walmart sometime, and you'll notice that a lot of prices are like 47 cents or 98 cents instead of 99. And that actually works better than the 99-cent trick because everyone knows the 99-cent trick. But more importantly, for premium products, whole numbers actually sell better. So if you're selling, what is supposedly this premier product for the ultra wealthy, the elite in our society, putting it at a $1,000 price tag will probably do better because round numbers are really popular on the high end, and on the low end, random numbers or seemingly random numbers seem to be more popular. The whole $9.99 thing it's very out of date.
Yeah, it's also again for cheaper products, like you said, when people are penny pinching, right? But no one's penny pinching when they buy Apple. Everyone knows in the gate that you're going to get an underperforming computer. You're really just buying the OS, as Apple's been kind of leaning on since the 1980s. You're buying the OS, and the OS costs $1,500 or $2,000 or $2,300, and and using the 9 is just the trick is just kind of classless,
right?
Honestly, on a product like this, everyone knows they're paying premium for the software. Everyone knows that, and maybe even they like the hardware, and everyone knows that they're paying premium for it. You don't need to convince. You're not going to convince a penny pincher. You know what? Seven penny pinchers maybe like, oh well, it's only with the 9. I'm gonna get a $59,000 Apple computer, as long as it's not 60,000. As long as it's $59,999, $59,999.
Well, look. I spec'd out this MacBook Air as reasonably close to my computer as I could, which no GPU, and I just put the highest end CPU they have because it's still not even close. Right. And the price that I get is $1,850. Now, the one benefit that this computer has is the laptop I'm currently using has a 512 gig SSD and then a 1 terabyte hard drive.
Is it 1850 or 1849?
1849. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically, as you spec this thing up, it gets insanely expensive. For context, my computer cost about $1,250. Give or take a few bucks in tax and all that. But my computer would blow this thing out of the water. And if I put a 2 terabyte SSD in there, that is an $800 upgrade over the base model. Also, 8 gigabytes of RAM is base. And if you upgrade to 16 gigs of RAM, that will cost you $200. Which, let me see what I can find here on RAM prices, because I haven't looked at them in a while. System builder. We'll just start with RAM. Okay. Clock speed is 3733. Can I find RAM that has a similar clock speed? Ah, here, right here. Okay. For that price, you could buy 2 sticks of RAM for $124. So Apple is charging you, what, 4 times the price per gigabyte over just buying this RAM on some random website. Who is selling this for this price? Probably Amazon. Oh, Walmart and Amazon. Okay. So they're charging you almost 4 times the price per gigabyte for this RAM. In fact, I could probably get the 16 gigabyte modules. Yeah, so I could get 32 gigs of RAM for the same price as they're charging you for an extra 8. Their pricing is ridiculous.
Right. Yeah. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
It's but hey, it's again, it's not a good. This is not good for them. This really isn't good for them. Any which way. It either the case goes somewhere and they might potentially lose a massive source of revenue while also breaking apart their other sources of revenue and their entire revenue scheme, or they don't, and the American public still gets even more upset at their existence because a bunch of their anti-competitive practices are going to be put in the light.
Yeah, even the pro Apple channels on YouTube are having trouble defending this.
Correct.
Like, this is blanketly anti-competitive and everyone knows it. Now, does that mean that anyone will stop buying Apple products? No, because people who are still buying Apple products at this point in time are too far gone, Alex. But,
what Apple product? Name the Apple product that I bought within the past 2 years.
The fact that it's within the last 2 years says enough.
3 years.
I'm thinking like 10.
4 years. 10?
Yes, 10.
Christ.
Apple has been this shit for more than 10 years.
Yes,
but it's been very public knowledge.
Windows deleted my document, Joe.
That was more than 10 years ago. Windows Vista was long dead when you bought that Mac. Like, everyone hated Vista, and that's when Apple got a whole ton of user base. Anyone who hasn't switched back by now has other problems.
Yeah, I do have other problems. I don't like Windows.
Someone is afraid of Linux.
I don't want to deal with Linux. I mean, maybe. I have actually been thinking about buying some shitty Windows computer and just wiping the Windows off of it.
But then you're not going to have that glass trackpad that you love.
I do like the glass trackpad.
Yeah, you could
very
easily boot Linux on your Mac.
You will not shame me. You will not shame me.
Oh,
you will not shame me for liking the glass trackpad.
I will.
Okay?
I will.
It substantially improves
let me
the
just,
quality of use.
I just touched some plastic. And now I'm dead.
You know what? You know what? You know what? You know what?
And here I am reaching to the other solution other than just tolerating plastic trackpads. Here is a mouse. It is plugged into my computer. And I just touched it. I did not die.
Even though you don't like to use gestures, doesn't mean other people don't like to use gestures.
Okay, but you can do that without a glass trackpad.
I like the glass trackpad. Am I not allowed to like the glass trackpad?
I mean, you are. It just doesn't justify using Mac.
Look, I'm using this computer till it dies. I paid enough money for it. I'm using it until it dies, and I'm especially going to use it until Windows stops turning off the computer when it's disconnected from power for 5 minutes. I'm reorganizing the office space, you know, despite how many times I've told Windows to keep it on.
I mean,
My computer can lose
that's
power.
weird because I
can lose
never run into
battery
that
power.
problem.
I don't know what to tell you.
Like, I have the right settings on my computer to do it.
This
And
is
I've
as
never
Windows.
had it fail to work that way.
This is as Windows can get. I have a flagship Microsoft product.
Well, that's
Okay?
what you get. You bought the Mac, but with Windows loaded on it. That was your mistake. Look, everyone who knew anything about OSs went, oh, Microsoft is releasing their own version of the Mac? Let's avoid that.
I wanted a transition computer to get me between. I also wanted to eliminate my desire for a tablet by having a tablet PC. You know, I did not know. I did not know how horrific that would actually go.
Well, look,
How many
Alex,
crimes against God and nature?
what you've done by buying a Surface, and especially that top-end Surface that you have that has so many built-in issues,
Yeah.
is you've done the equivalent of buying a Google Nexus phone in like 2012. It's like
Or
you were
buying
like,
a Google
well,
Pix- buying a Google Pixel now.
Well, no, the Google
Honestly.
Pixel is so much better than the Nexus was. But your thought process here is Google makes the operating system, therefore Google should make the hardware. And so you've bought a really shitty device. And you've done exactly that with Windows.
It's for optimization.
Where you were like, okay,
Also, I never bought the Google
that
Pixel.
just, I can feel the Apple in that.
I know.
It's for optimization.
Yes.
That's not how Windows works.
But in my mind, that's how it works.
Because you use a Mac.
No, because I had an iPhone and now I have a Note. And every app is significantly slower and shittier on the Android ecosystem. On the Android ecosystem. On this Android device. It's a Note. It's a flagship phone.
Uh-huh.
But the apps are all shit.
Uh-huh.
I mean, they're not unusable, but they're significantly slower than
Right.
apps that I got on my iPhone when I had an iPhone.
Right.
Now, that does not change my mind. That's not enough. But for the computer, it is enough because I want my programs to work properly. Like one of my main programs
I'm not
that
even
I
gonna.
use,
I don't want to mention the amount of times that I have managed to crash. What is it? Final Cut Pro by importing music through iTunes on a Mac. 2 first-party Apple programs running on Apple hardware, on Apple software. And I crashed it like 500 times in a row.
I would like to avoid skins. Okay, maybe it's only an issue for like the Android phones because they put skins on it, and Windows doesn't really have a skin put on it by various
Correct.
computer manufacturers. Okay, maybe it's that.
No one goes to buy a PC and thinks, man, I should buy it from Microsoft. Because Microsoft is a hardware company. For literally 2 years at the point you bought your computer.
Shut up. all I know is that SketchUp on Windows is shit, and I hate it. Okay? And if I have to keep this shit computer for another 5 years until Windows and SketchUp decide to figure out what's going on with their program and make it a little bit less like the early 2000s era of UI, okay, then so be it. So be it. Because I wanted the Surface to take control of everything. I wanted to give up my tablet. I wanted to give up my computer. I wanted to give up all of the devices, or as many as I could, which is tablet and computer, to just have one device. I wanted a drawing board. I wanted to get into graphic design, but I can't because they're shit. It's shit. It is a shit product with a shit OS.
This is called Alex did not do 5 minutes worth of research before picking out a computer.
It's not. It's not. But SketchUp as a program is shit on Windows. How do
I
you solve that, Joe?
I
How
don't
do
know.
you solve it? It's shit on Windows.
Okay.
SketchUp is one of my most used programs on my computer.
Oh, so one program. Yeah. Okay. You use SketchUp. You like Mac OS. Have you looked at the Linux version of SketchUp?
No.
Right. So again, you looked at Microsoft and you said Microsoft is a reputable hardware company with 2 years of experience making hardware under their belt. And you bought a product that was essentially experimental.
Doesn't Photoshop not work on Linux?
Photoshop does not work on Linux. That is why I am still running Windows. That is
There you go.
literally
There
the
you go.
only reason I'm not using Linux. Yeah, but you aren't really reliant on Windows apps, whereas I am. You use GIMP. You know what GIMP
That's
was
true.
built for?
Linux. I'm
Linux.
assuming.
Yeah. Like half the software that you use was built for Linux first and then ported to Mac.
Okay.
So
Okay.
like in my instance, I use Photoshop because I have Windows and I have a Windows copy of Photoshop. And if literally anyone out there can get Photoshop to work somewhat reliably online, I will switch to Linux. Because that is the only thing stopping me. And it is the only thing that has stopped me the last 4 or 5 times I've tried. And to be fair, Photoshop actually boots up on Linux now. It's gotten to the point where there is only one fundamental thing that makes me unable to use Photoshop on Linux, and that is the fact that if you open a PSD file on Linux, Photoshop instantly crashes. Because everything else that I use seems to work. It's just that one thing.
Right. Okay. Well, look. Okay. Since I guess in your mind it's still a crime that I prefer Mac OS over
It is.
Windows or Linux.
It is.
You know,
Essentially a
if
capital
I
offense.
need to get a new computer, look, I switched my phone. I switched my phone. I
Uh huh.
switched it to a Note that
Yeah, no,
I
notice you
knew
didn't buy
going
a
in.
Nexus. You'd probably be on
Going in
iPhone
that the
right
app
now
would be
if you'd
shit.
bought a
I knew
Nexus.
shut up. I knew going in. I knew going in that the apps would be shit, and they definitely were shit.
Uh huh.
They definitely were shit.
Yeah.
They were a lot worse than the iPhone. They loaded slower. They
Yeah.
worked slower.
Correct.
The whole the fucking refresh rate on them was worse.
Yeah. Even now, iOS apps use about half the RAM of Android apps,
Right.
which is the benefit of having 4 supported devices versus 4,000 supported devices.
Correct.
So yeah, there are definitely benefits to their ecosystem and their hardware optimizations and all that.
No, that's
I
why
just
I
don't think
want
they
to find
outweigh
it.
all the other downsides.
That's why I would no. But I'm trying to leave it. I'm trying to find a company, whether it's Google or Microsoft. It's probably going to be Google that will provide an experience, a similar experience like that when I inevitably have to change my phone and I no longer have a realistic option to get a headphone jack from Samsung. I might as well go to the Pixel because at least that phone experience is, you know, cut and dry when it comes to the apps, the manufacturer, the creator of the OS is all the same company.
Yeah, but
So
that doesn't make a difference on open platforms. It just doesn't. Google cannot make Android run better
you're
because they
saying,
make
oh,
Android.
are you saying that Android doesn't run faster on a Pixel?
No, because it's still at the core Android, and it is built to run on all this different hardware. Google doesn't have like some special magic button where they're like, we have super optimized this. In fact, Google probably does the least optimizing of anyone. Because like Samsung, you notice that it takes them like a year and a half to release Android updates.
Right.
That's because they sit there and they optimize the hell out of it. And then they put their own skin on it and all that. And that's what all the third-party Android manufacturers do. But Google is just like, yeah, it runs on our hardware, and our hardware is kind of crap. And that's what they do. So, look, with a very closed ecosystem like macOS, it makes sense to, yes, Apple will be able to optimize for iOS better than anyone else because they're the only ones who make the hardware. But when it comes to Android and Windows, Microsoft doesn't know how to make Windows run any better, and Google doesn't know how to make Android run any better because they don't care. Because there are, 500 other companies manufacturing hardware for them, and those guys can figure that shit out. It's a very Apple mindset that you have here. Because, yeah, Apple builds their software with their hardware in mind, and Microsoft builds software in one department. And then in a completely different department that doesn't talk to the software department, they built the Surface. They didn't build the two things together. They built two different things.
Right. Anyway, so we'll see what happens with Apple. We'll see their impending destruction and their separation, which will null and void. If the company is just straight up broken up, it will null and void this whole optimization.
Right.
Hardware and software.
Yeah.
So at that point, it won't even be worth it. So I will probably change to either Linux or Windows. As much as I fucking hate Windows, with all of my goddamn soul.
Well, look, I strongly recommend that when you switch back to Windows, you buy something from a responsible company that is known for making high quality products. So, ASUS if you want to go on the cheap end, or Dell if you want to go on the expensive end. Buy from a company with a reasonable reputation.
Louis Rossman would recommend
IBM.
Recommend Lenovo.
Oh yeah, Lenovo. Oh, yeah, but Louis Rossman likes Lenovo because of one particular model of computer.
The ThinkPad.
Yeah, and not even the new one, the original ThinkPad from like 20 years ago.
I see.
Yeah.
What about HP?
I mean, it doesn't matter that much. I mean, the brand is nice and all. But really, what you have to do is just look into the computer. See what has the specifications you like. Look at reviews of it. See if it tends to run hot. Like the laptop that I have. Everyone is complaining that it runs hot. And I was like, I really don't care if it runs hot. That's not a big problem for me.
Right.
Because I'm really never going to saturate the hardware in this thing with what I do with it. So if it runs hot and throttles, it still won't hurt me.
Right.
But it has a kind of dim display. But okay, I hook it up to a TV anyways and use that as my display half the time.
Anyway.
You're gonna have to look at a list of what you want in a computer and find a computer that meets that. So decent specs, decent thermals, decent display, glass trackpad, whatever it is that you're looking for.
Go fuck yourself. I like the trackpad. It's not a crime.
Yeah, I know. But like, there are actually other companies that make glass trackpads. They don't look as pretty as Apple's. They don't look as pretty, but they are equally glass.
No, it's not about the glass. Okay, it wasn't about the glass. It's not actually about the glass and the plastic. It's just on frosted glass, it's smoother to move your finger on it, and at the same time, the precision of the device and where your finger is on the device is better. It's just better when doing multi-touch actions than it is typically with a Windows. I experienced this with my Toshiba that I got. I still experience it on the fucking Surface. The Surface is supposed to be the Mac of PCs.
Yeah, that's not a good thing. When I say the Mac of PCs, I'm talking about like the Al-Qaeda of Muslims here. I'm not saying it's a good thing.
Well, I'm saying that if they're trying to emulate Mac, they're not doing a good job when it comes to the trackpad.
They're not doing a good job about anything because it's Microsoft, and they are a software company that decided to make hardware because, fuck it, if we make it look kind of like a Mac, people who buy Macs might buy it. And it fucking worked.
It did work, especially with their studio.
Yeah. Well, I think the Surface Studio is alright. But also
I actually really like the studio.
Yeah, I like the idea of it. If I did a lot more drawing, I might actually go for that. The Surface Pro, I looked at it and went, that's going to cause so many problems. And then I experienced yours, and I was like, that caused so many problems.
Right.
And
Anyway.
I regret you buying a Surface Pro.
Well, fortunately,
Because
it
your
was free.
fucking trackpad doesn't even work.
Fortunately, it was free. Incidentally.
Yeah.
But
look, it's nice as a tablet. It's not nice as a $4,000 desktop PC.
It's not even that nice as a tablet, to be honest.
Oh, I don't mind it as a tablet. My main issue with it as a desktop is the fact that the trackpad doesn't fucking work.
Yeah, half the time.
Yeah.
No, I mean, look, it has a lot of issues, okay? But...
I mean, your scaling problems could be solved by a quick toggle of a setting in the Windows settings.
That's not fucking true. And you
It is.
goddamn know it. Shut the fuck up.
What?
It's not true.
Let's load it up here. Let's see.
No, fuck you. I'm not even in the room. Don't touch my computer.
Look, I found the setting yesterday.
Believe it or not, we actually have to record in different rooms for the podcast because we couldn't get the mic setup to work because we don't have any money.
Yeah. We don't have a soundproofing wall between us, and we're like 12 feet apart.
Look, okay. After you end this podcast, which has already been running way over what it needed to.
Way over.
Wait a second. Weren't we going to talk about fucking politics?
No.
No.
Well, we're 11 minutes over. That's perfectly average for us.
Oh, 11?
But I guess we'll end it because we're way over time.